Welcome to Rally. Is anybody glad to be at the first rally of the year, the first rally of 2026? Come on, make some noise if you're happy to be here. So good to see you, every single one of you. Look at somebody who's sitting next to you and say, I'm so glad to be sitting next to you tonight. You may not even know them. You may not even know their name. Introduce yourself to them. Tell them, I'm so glad to be sitting next to you. So glad all of you are here. I know people are still trickling in. I heard there was a terrible accident on 95. I apologize for that, even though I had nothing to do with that. It wasn't my fault, but I still say sorry because that sucks, and I appreciate you making it despite the traffic. Go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself a little hand clap because you did that. Look at you. You love Jesus, don't you? You showed up on a Friday night to church despite the traffic, despite all the other things you could have been doing. Yes, I'm proud of you. If we've not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Pastor Charlie Hughes. I have the honor of leading this movement of young adults called Rally. And I just have a feeling about tonight, people. I got a feeling about tonight. Does anyone else have a feeling about tonight? I mean, I have to imagine that you wouldn't show up to church on a Friday night if you didn't come desiring to meet with Jesus. And I don't think you always have to attach a feeling to God's presence. It doesn't always take a feeling to know that you're in the presence of God. But when God confirms that he's there with feelings, that's a pretty cool thing. And I don't know about anyone else, but I just had a feeling during that worship set that God is among us, that Jesus Christ is in the room. And when Jesus is in the room, he never shows up empty-handed. That means breakthrough can break out. That means healing can happen. That means miracles can be made. That means that everything can change for you tonight. Does anybody believe it? And we call this rally, the first rally of the year, Rally No Regrets, because we're believing that God is going to do a work in our lives tonight and speak to us in such a way tonight that it sets us up and gives us what we need to live a life, or at least have a year with no regrets. A year that a year from now we can look back on and put our names on proudly and say, God did that. God is something cool because I chose to believe, be obedient, whatever God may speak tonight to do, because you're going to choose to do that. I'm believing a year from now, your life is going to look different in a way that you can look back and say, I got no regrets about 2026. No regrets. But if you're here for the first time, and maybe that's your resolution this year, to be in church and among people like yourself who love Jesus more regularly, allow me just to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not an only child. My parents are here, Pastors David and Lisa Hughes. My dad's the pastor of this church. I think it's cool that my parents show up, not just to support me, but to take a look at all of you on a Friday night and say, wow, what an amazing young adult community and movement we have at First Baptist and Church by the Glades. I have two amazing parents, but I'm not an only child. I have two siblings, two younger siblings, one of which is in the room tonight, the only 16-year-old we knowingly let come to Rally, my younger brother, Zane. And Zane's a good man, but I have to be careful not to call Zane my little brother, because that would be a lie. If you know Zane, he's like 6'2", 6'3". He's taller than me. He literally looks down at me, which, as you can imagine, is a very, very, very humbling thing for me. Zane, he's my little big brother. And he's also a very good basketball player. Around COVID time, he kind of became obsessed with basketball, and he perfected his jump shot, and he mastered his handlings. He's played for many different teams throughout the years, organized teams for AAU, for his high school. He's currently playing for the City League. Zane's a good hooper, and I never did any of that. I can barely dribble with my right hand. Don't ask me to go left. And although Zane has had all these accomplishments in basketball, and we've played one-on-one pickup basketball many, many different times, and he's beaten me many, many different times, because Zane is my little big brother, because he's my younger brother, my brain will not even consider the possibility that Zane is better than me in any sport of any kind. I just will not accept that. So even still, and even though Zane has beat me more times than I can count in pickup basketball, every day when we play, I still believe that I can not just beat him, but destroy him in basketball. Normally resulting in me getting destroyed and beat very badly in basketball, which results, as you can imagine, in much frustration and anger and words coming to my mind that don't come out of my mouth. Just be praying for your pastor. It's a consistent struggle playing Zane in basketball. So I would probably do well to take to heart, and for sure lose less games of basketball to my younger brother, to take to heart the words of the great poet Maya Angelou, who writes, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Zane has shown me time and time again that he's a better basketballer than me. I ought to just believe him. But my question for you tonight is, when God shows you who he is, do you believe him? Because I think if we want 2026 to be better, greater, different than years gone by, if in this year you want to see change in your life that up to this point you've not been able to see, taste, or experience, no matter what changes you've made in order to taste, see, and experience it, then I think this must be a year where you don't just take God at his word. I think 2026 must be a year where you start to take God at his work. And that's the title of the message tonight. The title of this message is Take Him at His Work. Look at somebody you're sitting next to and tell them like you know they need to hear it. Tell them, take him at his work. Take him at his work. It's too quiet. Say, take him at his work. Every miracle has meaning. Like miracles are not just God's version of a magic trick that he chooses to perform when he's bored to entertain himself and impress others. No. Miracles are much deeper than that because God is much deeper than that. And whenever God puts his power on display, actually, it's because he wants us to walk away with a greater understanding of who he is and what he is able to do. Which means we must remember that whenever God puts his power on display and performs a miracle of any kind and in any size, it's not just to transform something, it is to teach us something. And so whenever we witness or experience God do a miracle of any kind or of any size in our lives, or whenever we read God do a miracle in the Bible, especially one as amazing as the one we're getting ready to study and read tonight, which I might mention is the only miracle recorded in all four Gospels, apart from the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ, which ought to tell us that this miracle is important, I think we'd be then wise to ask ourselves, what makes this miracle so important? When it comes to any miracle in our lives, we ought to ask ourselves, what was the purpose of Jesus performing this miracle? What is God trying to teach me about him through this? And so in Mark chapter 6, we find Jesus being reunited with his 12 disciples after for a period of time they had spent away from him, performing miracles such as healing the sick and freeing people of impure spirits with power that Jesus had given them. That's a very important detail. That would not have been lost on these disciples, that they were only doing these miraculous things because Jesus had told them that he was giving them the power to do these kinds of miraculous things, heal the sick and cast out demons. And so Jesus is reuniting with his disciples in Mark chapter 6, and they're telling him all the amazing things they did with the power that Jesus gave them. And as they're telling Jesus about all the things they did in this time they spent away from him with this power, we're told that thousands of people found them and began requesting that Jesus teach them. And because Jesus loved these people, he had compassion on them, and so he chose to teach them. And after a full day of teaching, hours upon hours upon hours, Jesus' disciples come to him and say, yo, Jay, send these people away so they can go get themselves something to eat. And in Mark chapter 6, beginning in verse 37, Jesus replies to his disciples by saying this, you give them something to eat. They said to Jesus, but that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? Then Jesus asked them, how many loaves do you have? Go and see, search the crowd, try to get some food together. When they found out, they said to Jesus, okay, we did just that, and we have 5 loaves and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s, taking the loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, Jesus gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. They were all ate and they were filled. They all ate and they all left with big bloated bellies. And the disciples picked up the 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. 5,000. Yeah, it's a miracle. You can put your hands together for that. You didn't know Jesus could cook, did you? Now, let's not overcomplicate this. The most obvious purpose that this miracle serves is Jesus feeding 5,000 hungry people. But track with me. If Jesus can use just 2 fish and 5 loaves to feed 5,000, then I think Jesus can also use one miracle to serve multiple purposes. And I think that Jesus wanted this miracle to serve more than just a purpose of feeding 5,000 people. I really do. I think Jesus also wanted to use this miracle to educate his disciples. Because notice, they were the ones who initiated this miracle. It was not a representative from the thousands, but Jesus' own disciples who came up to him and said, Jesus, send these people away so they can go get something to eat. You've been teaching all day. And in response, Jesus looks at his disciples and says, you feed them. Which, granted, would be an overwhelming task to unexpectedly be given. Being told out of nowhere without planning on it that you're now in charge of feeding 5,000 people. And you can tell how stressed out and overwhelmed the disciples are upon hearing this because they start doing quick math. They're like, 5,000 divided by, carry the... Jesus, that would take half a year's wages. And so Jesus says, okay, fine. It's not like I've been teaching all day or anything, but I'll go ahead and feed them. Just go survey the crowd, get together whatever food you can, and I'll make a meal for these 5,000 people out of that. So the disciples did just that. They surveyed the crowd, they collected food together, and all they managed to scrape together was just 5 measly loaves and 2 fish. And another gospel actually tells us that they got these 5 loaves and 2 fish from a little boy. So essentially, they handed Jesus a first century Lunchables to work with, and from this, Jesus managed to feed 5,000 people. Because little is much when God is in it. And I think Jesus was trying to teach his disciples that I can do anything. Because if the disciples really believed that Jesus had the power to do anything, then when they heard that 5,000 people needed feeding, they would not have been panicking. Because nothing is worth your panic when you truly, genuinely, authentically believe that Jesus wields all power. The disciples knew that Jesus had some power because remember, Jesus had recently given them some power to do miraculous things in his name. Things such as healing the sick and casting out impure spirits out of people, freeing people of their infirmities. But although they knew that Jesus had the power to free, based on how they act in this scene, they knew that Jesus had the power to free, but I don't think they knew that Jesus had the power to feed. So I think Jesus performed this miracle to show his disciples what I'm trying to show you tonight. That Jesus' miracle working ability is not confined to a certain miracle category. But actually Jesus can do anything. He can free, he can feed, and he can do everything in between. Jesus can do anything. We ought not think about God's power like how we think of other sources of power. All gas does not work for all cars, but our God works for all circumstances. All chargers don't work for all phones, but our God works for all problems. Gas has its limits, chargers have their limits, electricity has its limits, solar has its limits, but our God has no limits. Our God has a one-size-fits-all kind of power because his power works for all different kinds of situations. Our God can heal the sick, and our God can also fill stomachs. Our God can calm raging storms, and our God can calm racing minds. Our God can break addictions, and our God can cast out demons. Our God can help you with your debt, and our God can raise the dead. Our God can do the obviously supernatural, and our God can just help us with the everyday parts of life that are difficult and stressful. And this message of God being able to do anything to you likely won't mean anything if you've never been through anything. But if I have some people in the room who have some problems and find strength in the fact that your God has all power, I invite you to make yourself known tonight, right about now. If God had the power to come through for you in one area of your life, this means he has the power to come through for you in another area of your life also. If Jesus proved to have the power to do that, guess what? He also has the power to do this. It does not matter if the two areas of your life, the two problems seem totally unrelated. Jesus' power does not discriminate. Any problem can get a taste of what his power can do. Because Jesus has power, period, full stop. We must have faith, period, full stop. Because Jesus has the power to do anything, we must have faith for everything. Whenever Jesus does something new in your life, it's because from that experience, he wants you to walk away with the faith moving forward that he can do something new for you once again in the future. Like let's say if God were to free you from your anxiety, and that's new for you, I don't want you just to walk away from that experience of Jesus freeing you from your anxiety saying, oh, I now believe that Jesus can free people from anxiety. I now believe that Jesus can do that one thing. No, I want you to walk away from that experience also saying, I now believe that Jesus has the power to do anything. Because whenever Jesus does something new and miraculous in your life, I'm talking about anything of any kind or of any size, Jesus is not just trying to give you a new breakthrough. He's trying to give you a new baseline that you build your faith off of moving forward in the future. I find it crazy that Jesus being God, even though the disciples did not realize this yet about him that he was God, this means that Jesus had the power not just to make, but to know exactly, precisely how much food would be needed to feed these thousands of people. But yet still Jesus made so much food that there was 12 basketfuls of leftovers afterwards. A basketful for each disciple. There were 12 baskets of leftovers. Jesus had 12 disciples. This tells me how seriously Jesus wanted his disciples to learn this lesson, that he could do anything. Because each of them would have literally had to carry a basket full of the leftovers of the more than enough they ended up with that would have came from the not enough they gave Jesus to begin with. Because Jesus can do, somebody say it, anything. He can do anything. And actually, the disciples would have these loaves and these pieces of fish with them the next time they would need Jesus to perform a miracle. The story continues, I believe, in verse 45. It reads this, that immediately, after all these people getting fed, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. Because Jesus needed some alone time. You didn't know Jesus was an introvert, did you? And after leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat that the disciples were on was in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Other translations will tell us that they were caught in a violent storm. Shortly before dawn, seeing them in the storm, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. I love how the Bible is just so casual about that. Like, yes, Jesus was walking, and that's really all the Bible says about that. And he was getting ready to pass by them, but the disciples saw Jesus walking on the lake, and they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him, and they were terrified. They did not recognize him. And immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Then Jesus climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed at what Jesus had done, for, verse 52, they had not understood about the loaves. Wait a minute. What does bread have to do with Jesus walking on water? Everything. Because Jesus walking on water is just a different display of the same power that made the bread they had in the boat with them. And if they truly would have walked away from the experience of Jesus feeding 5,000 people, believing that Jesus could do anything, then they would not have been surprised moving forward by Jesus doing anything. But because of the storm that was going on all around them, they seemed to forget about the bread they had in the boat with them. But before we judge them, let's be honest and ask ourselves and admit, how often do we find ourselves living in the leftovers of yesterday's miracles, still lacking faith for today? How often do we find ourselves living in the overflow of God's last display of power in our lives, but yet at the same time, on the other hand, still feeling overwhelmed by life's pressures? This is why whenever you find yourself in your own metaphorical, proverbial storm of life, feeling like you're in a boat being tossed by the waves, scared, sick, and stressed, whatever you do, don't forget the bread. Don't forget the bread. Look at somebody who's sitting next to him and tell them, don't forget the bread. It's too quiet. Say, don't forget the bread. One more time this side. Say, don't forget the bread. Didn't your mama tell you, you got to eat bread when you feel sick? Because bread has this ability, unlike other foods, to settle an upset stomach by soaking up whatever it is that is irritating it. Can I tell you, it will be the bread in your life, the memories, mementos you have from miracles and displays of God's power in the past, as you choose to feed on it by calling to mind what God has done for you before, that will cause your belief to soak up your unbelief, that will cause your belief to soak up your panic, that will cause your belief to soak up your stress, that will cause your belief to soak up your fear, and even cause problems that should have meant your death to be swallowed up, soaked up in victory. Oh, it will be the bread in your life, the memories you have of things that God has done for you before that will hold you over as you wait on God to make good on what He's promised you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over into your lap. I gotta think that the bread they had with them in the boat was Wonder Bread, because it was supposed to be the bread that would keep them wondering in fear. Will we make it out of this? And keep them wondering in faith, how is Jesus going to do it this time? But can we really say that Jesus has the power to do anything if He cannot do anything at any time? That's why I think Jesus waited until the middle of the night, when the dark was all around, at 3 o'clock in the morning, with a storm raging and wind blowing and thunder crashing, to step out and walk on that water. Because if Jesus has the power to do anything, this means even in the storms of life too. This means even when things seem dark too. This means even when you can't tell your way up from your way down too. This means even when you feel like you're going to drown too. Because Jesus' perfect power does not need perfect conditions. Because what you're scared you're going to drown in is what Jesus walks on. What makes you panic is the pavement under His feet. Do you hear me? Jesus does not need to wait for storms to stop in order for Him to start. I think Jesus put these disciples in this boat the same reason He brought you here tonight, to let you know that not only can He do anything, but He can do anything and at any time. Even when the doctor says it's too late, God can still heal. Even when the marriage seems over, God can still restore. Even when the dream seems dead, God can still resurrect. Even when the business seems done, God can still save. It's not over until God says it's over. He can do anything at any time, even now. But it will be so hard for you to recognize what God is currently doing for you if you do not call a miracle what God has already done for you. This is what happened to the disciples. Because they did not understand the bread that Jesus made out of the crumbs He was given as a miracle and evidence that Jesus can do anything, they were not able to receive with joy and gladness Jesus walking on water to save them, but instead they were frightened, terrified, scared, and called Jesus a ghost. But not only if you don't call a miracle what God has already done for you, will it keep you from being able to receive with joy what God is currently trying to do for you, but if you don't call what God has already done for you fuel for your faith that it was meant to be, I'm telling you, eventually you will start to call it a fluke. Not something miraculous that God did, but just some coincidence that really worked out for you. And it will actually have you in the same situations that God has already proven powerful enough to help you out of, to continue stealing your joy, to continue stealing your peace, to continue stealing the sense of purpose that is the reason God has placed you where He has you. The disciples show us that this is true because 2 chapters later, the disciples would once again find themselves with thousands of mouths to feed. Except this time, it would not be 5,000 mouths, it would be 4,000 mouths. And instead of having just 5 loaves and 2 pieces of fish, they would actually have 7 loaves and a few, meaning more than 3 pieces of fish. Meaning that the second time, only 2 chapters later, they had less people to feed and more food to feed with. But instead of just saying to Jesus, how do you plan to prepare the fish and loaves this time? They continued to doubt. Mark chapter 8, 2 chapters later, verses 2 through 4, read this. I have compassion for these thousands of people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat, Jesus said. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a great distance. But in verse 4, Jesus' disciple answered by saying, where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? Are you kidding me? They're in the same situation they were in just 2 chapters earlier, and they're still doubting. And notice, this time, Jesus does not even initially put the weight of the miracle on their shoulders like he did the first time. Remember, the first time, Jesus initially said, you feed them. But this time, Jesus doesn't do that. This time, Jesus says, I have compassion on these people. I have love for these people. I plan to feed these people. I wonder, are you feeling the pressure of certain problems in your life that are not even yours to fix? I wonder, are you looking at certain situations in your life wondering how you're going to do God's job? I'm not telling you tonight to have a lazy faith, a faith that just says about anything and everything, even things that you are supposed to do and things that are in your control, God will handle it. God will do it. God will take care of it. No, because oftentimes it's after we do all that we can do, then God shows up, blesses that, and does what only he can do. Oftentimes it's after we handle all that is in our control, God then takes care of what we can't control. I don't want you to have a lazy faith, but tonight I do want you to receive a learning faith. Because if you're finding yourself right now in a situation that is out of your control that you've been in before, and God showed up for you last time, then what sense does it make for you to believe that you're going to be the one to have to do God's job this time? No, actually, the logical thing for you to believe is that if Jesus showed up for you last time, because he's the same yesterday, today, and forever, he'll show up again this time. But I'll cut these disciples I've been beating up on all night this break. The reason they give Jesus for their doubting is that the scene of this feeding is a little different from the last one in that this time they're in a remote place. Somebody say a remote place. They're in a far off place, a long off place, a place where they don't think the resources for the miracle are available or accessible. They're in a remote place. And Jesus responds to their doubting in verse 5 by saying, how many loaves do you have? Now, this may not seem significant to you until I remind you that this question Jesus asked his disciples at the feeding of the 4,000 after they told Jesus they were doubting because they were in a remote place is the same question Jesus asked his disciples when they were at the feeding of the 5,000 right before he fed everybody. Jesus, I think, was actually asking this question rhetorically the second time. I think the second he asked this question, how many loaves do you have, he wasn't really trying to figure out how many loaves, how much food they had. I think really he was trying to jog the disciples' memory by asking the same question they were in last time. They were in this same situation, and everyone left after Jesus asked this question with big bloated bellies that, oh yeah, Jesus, I'm sorry, you can do anything. We can have 0 loaves of one another. You can just cause everyone to leave satisfied and filled. But the disciples weren't getting it, and they didn't understand that Jesus was probably asking this question more rhetorically than he was literally. And so they just respond to this question. Jesus asked, how many loaves do you have? With 7. But just because the disciples weren't getting it didn't mean that Jesus was going to send home hungry these thousands of people that he loved and had compassion for. So once again, Jesus, he performs a miracle, and he gives them another experience, gives his disciples another experience of his power that should cause them to walk away this time with no excuses of what he's able to do. Because if Jesus can perform a miracle even like this, from a place even like that, then this must mean that not only can Jesus do anything, and not only can Jesus do anything at any time, but this must mean that Jesus is able to do anything at any time and anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. If there's something that Jesus wants to do for you, or if there's something that Jesus wants to get to you, he can do it for you and get it to you even there. Because the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Jesus is God over the entire universe, which means there's no place you can set your foot or lay your head that is not Jesus' jurisdiction. This is why the psalmist writes, oh God, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you'll be there. If I make my bed in the depths, you'll be there. If I ride on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. Jesus can do anything in any atmosphere and among any audience. Biblical scholars tell us that the feeding of the 5,000, this first feeding, it took place among an audience of Jews, people who believed in God. But at the feeding of the 4,000, this second feeding, it took place among an audience of Gentiles, people who did not believe in God. But that just goes to show that Jesus can do anything in front of anybody. That church in front of his friends is not the only place that Jesus can perform miracles. But Jesus can meet you wherever he wants to. And he doesn't care who watches you as he blesses you. This is what David wrote in Psalm 23. God, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and you anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. You know what? We got a PDA kind of God. A God who will meet you at your school, a God who will meet you at your job, a God who will meet you at the gym, a God who will meet you in your boardroom. We have a God who will even meet you in the hospital room. We have a God who will meet when you're crying on the floor of your bathroom. We got a God who will meet you when you can't sleep in your bedroom. We have a God who will meet you anytime, anywhere, even on a Friday night in the heart of downtown Fort Lauderdale, where surely there are more young adults partying than there are praising. But that doesn't matter, because our God makes us the promise that we're just 2 or 3 or more gathered together in the name of the Lord. There he will be with them even here. But you don't even have to wait to get in the presence of others to experience the presence of God. Take a seat. Because from the mouth of Jesus, he tells us, I'll leave the 99 to come after the one that is lost. And there would be no need for Jesus to go after the one if the one was already close to him. I'm trying to tell you this evening that Jesus will meet you even in a remote place, in a place that feels far off, a long way off, that like his disciples you thought meant that Jesus would never and could never perform a powerful work for you there. Maybe you're here tonight because of mistakes that you've made, problems you've caused, sins you've committed, decisions that you regret. You've believed that this has put you in a place that spiritually is remote, far off, a long way off, where certainly Jesus would never meet you, where his powers are of no use. So you've been sitting here feeling like an imposter and believing that this message has been for everyone else who knows Jesus and has followed him for quite some time, but surely not for you, because you're just too far. Too far for Jesus to love you, too far for Jesus to meet you, too far for Jesus to meet a need within you, too far for Jesus to heal something broken, too far for Jesus surely to use you in some way that would bring a purpose to your life that has eluded you up to this point. You're just too far. Last year, I had the opportunity to travel to South Africa. And while I was there, I went on a safari. And on the safari, they let me know that there's something called the Big Five. A list of 5 animals that if you see them on your safari, man, you had an unbelievable safari. And if you would have asked me before going on the safari to guess what 5 animals comprise this list, I probably would have got 4 out of 5, because the list is the lion, the leopard, the elephant, the rhino, and this is the one I probably would have left off of the list, the water buffalo. That's because before I ever went on a safari, I had never seen a water buffalo. And I saw one water buffalo on my safari, and immediately I understood why it is included on this Big Five list. It was the most muscular, monstrous, massive animal I've ever seen in my life. And they're mean. Our tour guide actually warned us that for us tourists and us human beings, that the water buffalo was the most dangerous animal that we can encounter. Not the lion, not the tiger, not the bear. Oh my, no, the water buffalo. Because they're aggressive. If you get too close or make too much noise, they will charge the Jeep. I kid you not, with my own 2 eyes, I watched a water buffalo charge an elephant on the safari. They're crazy. And this one water buffalo we saw on the safari, it had these massive long horns, and they were scarred. Had these dents and these scratches on it. And my South African friend who was with me, his name was Ruhan, he leaned over to me and said, those scars tell a story. Because they were from all the different fights with other animals that this buffalo had been in the past. So I'm sure that those scars told a story. But I know some scars that tell a greater story. Because Jesus has some scars too. And his scars, they don't tell war stories, they tell a love story. Jesus' scars tell the story of the great length that his love was willing to go for me and for you, while the Bible tells us we were still sinners, still a far way off, still a long way off, still each and every single one of us in a spiritually remote place and running as fast as we can in the wrong direction. Jesus' love went this distance for us. It left heaven and came to earth, caused Jesus to become a man, caused nails to get pierced into his hands and his feet, caused flesh to be taken out of his back with a whip, caused a spear to be driven through his side, caused him to hang on a cross and die a criminal's death in our place that he did not deserve. And the point I'm trying to make to you is this: because Jesus' love for you went that far, that means that you can never find yourself ever in a place too far to stop Jesus from loving you. Because his love has already gone a greater distance than you could ever find yourself from him. His scars tell too great of a story. And the story his scars tell is this: where you are does not change who Jesus is. He's the God who loves you and who will never stop loving you. And the good news I have for you is this: wherever Jesus' love goes, his power follows. We observe this in this text. Jesus had love. He had compassion for these thousands of people. And then his power fed them. So Jesus tonight, his love meets you where you are. It doesn't matter what you've done wrong. It doesn't matter the decisions you regret. It doesn't matter the sins you've committed. And because his love meets you where you are, his power meets you there too. Jesus' love will meet you in your place of sin, and his power will take you to a place of forgiveness. Jesus' love will meet you in a place of shame, and his power will take you to a place of new beginnings. Jesus' love for you will meet you in your place of hurt, but his power will take you to a place of healing. Jesus' love for you will meet you in a place of brokenness, but his power will take you to a place of wholeness. Jesus' love for you will meet you in a place of regret, but his power will take you to a place of redemption. This message is for you to receive it. God can do anything, anywhere, at any time, and for anyone. Even that, even here, even now, for even you. I promise I'm winding down, but one last thing I got to show you. You can take a seat. That's what that means. Later in the same chapter that we find the feeding of the 4,000 in, Jesus has a conversation with his disciples. And he asks them, who do people say that I am? And they tell him, well, Jesus, some say that you're Elijah. Others say that you're John the Baptist. Others say that you're some other prophet. Jesus says, okay, cool. But you, who do you say that I am? And Peter pipes up and he says, Jesus, I don't say that you're some prophet. I say that you're the one who's been prophesied about. I say that you're the Messiah. I say that you're the Son of the living God. I say that you're the Savior of the world. Finally, after these 3 miracles, at least Peter gets it, that Jesus is God, the only one who can do anything, anywhere, at any time. And what you need to understand is that the same question Jesus asked his disciples all these years ago, he asks you tonight. Not who do others say that I am, but who do you say that I am? That's what Jesus asked you, because just like how he showed his disciples through these 3 miracles who he was, Time and time and time and time and time again in your life, Jesus has showed you who he is, the one true living God who can do anything at any time, anywhere. But the question is, have you believed him? Have you taken him at his work? Have you? Because I don't even have to know you to know that this is true about you. Your life is full of his miracle working evidence. His fingerprints are all over your past. Because you know this is true, don't you? Ever since you were a kid, there were different things you survived and made it out of that statistics say you should not have made it out of, that statistics say that you should not have overcome. And I love you, and I don't mean this to offend you, but I gotta tell you, you did not make it out. You did not survive. You have not succeeded like you have because you're just that smart, because you're just that strong, because you're just that good, because you're just that gritty. No, you've made it this far, and you survived like you had, and you've succeeded like you have because he's just that God. And if you want to experience change in your life this year, if this year you truly want things to be different, it's not really going to come through a New Year's resolution. It's going to come from you leaving this place tonight with a new revelation of who the person of Jesus is and what the power of Jesus can do. He's not just some guy. He's not just some teacher. He's the one true living God. So you got to leave here tonight saying that he is who he is, that he's the one who can do anything at any time, at anywhere, and for anyone. Because Jesus wants you to have the kind of faith in 2026 that will look at any problem in the face and say, oh, anytime, anywhere, you can catch these hands. But not these hands. I'm talking about these hands. Because you understand that your Savior can do anything, and you're strongest when you surrender. You got to have a faith in 2026 that doesn't only work on Friday nights once a month and on Sunday mornings, but a faith that will come through at any time, anywhere, because you have a God who can do anything, anytime, anywhere. I can't speak for anyone else, but I don't want to live my whole life listening to others' miracle stories. I want to have my own. So I'm going to have a faith for what I've not yet seen, because I know that I have a God who can do what he's not yet even done. Is there anybody with faith in the room tonight? If you are, I just wish you'd lift up your voice, even here, even now, even you, because all things are possible. Even now, even here, for even you. You don't need a worship team. Lift up your voice. Lift up your hands. Give God the biggest, craziest praise you can in this moment. Like you believe that 2026 can be a year. Like you believe this can be a year that you see God do all that he can do. Lift it up in this moment. There's power in this name.